Shalom, my friend. This week we see the beginning of another stage of the formation of the Jewish identity through shared history and through a shared covenant. Moving from slavery to freedom. We are in Parashat Shemot. Shemot is the Hebrew name for the book Exodus. Parashat Shemot is found in the book of Exodus chapter 1 verse 1 up to 6 verse 1. Today we will focus on the action of two women, Shiphrah and Puah. The midwives who defied Pharaoh's order to kill all newborn Israelite boys, an unparalleled act of civil disobedience, moral courage, and the fear of God over the fear of men. Their righteousness was foundational to the eventual redemption of the children of Israel from Egypt. It is quite possible that they achieved this not by graduating from any prestigious college or university, but just by each of them truly having the heart of a mother. To appreciate the full account, our reading today, friend, is going to be a little bit longer. We are going to read from Exodus chapter 1, verse 11 up to 21 as follows. So they set slave masters over them to afflict them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramses as storage cities for Pharaoh. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread. So the Egyptians dreaded the presence of Bnei Israel. They worked them harshly and made their lives bitter with hard labor, with mortar and brick, doing all sorts of work in the fields. In all their labors, they worked them with cruelty. Moreover, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, and he said, "When you help the Hebrew women during childbirth, look at the sex. If it's a son, then kill him, but if it's a daughter, she may live." Yet the midwives feared God, so they did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this? Let the boys live." The midwives told Pharaoh, "Because Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are like animals and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied, growing very numerous. Because the midwives feared God, He gave them families of their own. Here we see a number of Jewish concepts that we will summarize as follows. Pikuach nefesh. This is the Hebrew word for saving a life or preserving a soul. Jewish law, known in Hebrew as halacha, establishes that saving a life takes precedence over almost all other mitzvot. Mitzvot are commandments, including Shabbat laws. The case of the midwives is even unique because in order to pikuach nefesh, in order to save a life or to preserve a soul, they had to obey a king's immoral and life-destroying command. Jewish tradition hails the midwives' refusal as the first recorded instance of civil disobedience in literature. The second concept is Yirat Hashem, which is Hebrew for the fear or the reverence of God. Yirat Hashem, the reverence of God, is considered a foundational virtue in Judaism. It is often described as the beginning of wisdom. Herein, you are always conscious that throughout your life, day and night, in public and alone, you are always before God. Evidently, the midwives feared God more than they feared men. Their ethical intuition and reverence for the divine command drove them to this civil disobedience. They had an internal moral compass that pointed toward divine values. And this is what empowered them to resist oppressive commands from an evil system, leading them to protect innocent lives, aligning their will to God's will rather than to Pharaoh's will. Kiddushat Hashem is the Hebrew for for the sanctification of God's name, or the holiness of God's name. This refers to the liturgical concept and attention during Jewish prayer, and to the principle of God's name through one's actions, even to the point of martyrdom. It encompasses recognizing God's unique holiness and acting in ways that uphold His honor. The midwife's actions sanctified God's name by upholding the sanctity of human lives in the face of such a great risk, equivalent in seriousness to risking their own lives. The Torah states that God dealt well with them and gave them families of their own. Surely there are divine rewards for those who courageously uphold divine commands and expectations. The fourth concept that we see is chesed. And chesed is a Hebrew word for loving kindness, steadfast love, and so on. Wholeheartedly going the extra mile before God, possibly without even expecting any reward. Shiphrah and Puah's actions were selfless and went beyond mere duty. They went beyond the letter of the law to protect vulnerable lives, upholding the ideal of loving kindness embedded in the Torah. Their story elevates the status of women as agents of change and moral leadership in Jewish tradition. The heroism of ordinary individuals. Shiphrah and Puah were women in a low status, subservient position, yet they defied the ultimate power in Egypt at that time, in partnership with God. Indeed, God often works through ordinary people with conviction, and the true greatness lies in character and courage rather than in power and status. As a result of the outstanding actions of Shiphrah and Puah, the children of Israel survived, and eventually they were redeemed into the promised land. And in the movement of time, Yeshua was born in this land of promise, of the promises that were given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was important that Yeshua is born in here because this is where the prophecies of the birth and life of Yeshua are focused. Thank you so much for watching. May Adonai bless you greatly.